A snake hangs suspended above a bound god, dripping venom onto his face for eternity, all because of a mistletoe dart and a brother's grief. The punishment for Baldur's death was not a simple execution. It was a transformation into a living prison, crafted from the body of his own child. How does a father end up chained to a rock by his son's intestines? And what does that gruesome scene tell us about the Norse understanding of justice and chaos? The answer lies not in a simple tale of revenge, but in a complex web of deceit, a failed trial, and a prophecy that even the gods could not outrun. We all think of Loki as a purely malevolent trickster, a being of pure chaos who simply enjoyed watching the world burn, but the reality is far more nuanced. The Loki of the Prose Edda is a catalyst, a force of disruption who exists in a necessary tension with the order of Asgard. He is not a demon from the outset, but a blood brother to Odin, a companion on many adventures, and a problem solver as often as he is a problem creator. The tragedy of Baldur is not a random act of malice, but the culmination of a long series of escalating pranks and betrayals that finally crossed an unforgivable line. The gods did not bind him because he was a villain. They bound him because he had become an unbearable liability, a threat so profound that it warranted an eternal, visceral punishment. The story of his binding is not just about punishment, but about the desperate measures a pantheon will take to protect the fragile boundaries of their reality, even if it means committing an atrocity of their own. It forces us to question if the gods were any better than the monster they chained. The punishment was not a clean execution, but a grotesque, intimate act of violence chosen specifically to mirror the intimacy of his betrayal. This was not about dispensing justice. It was about making an example of the one being who had proven that even divine order could be undone by a well-placed lie. Imagine the scene at the feast after Baldur's death. The gods are silent, their grief a physical weight that smothers the hall. They have just buried the most beloved of their number, and the culprit, Loki, has fled, knowing his deception with the mistletoe spear has shattered the peace of Asgard forever. He does not go to a distant land to hide. He builds a house with 4 doors, so he can see in every direction, and devises a plan to escape his inevitable pursuers. He plans to turn into a salmon and hide in a waterfall, but the gods are relentless. When they finally catch him, the confrontation is not a battle, it is a capture. Loki is bound, not with iron chains, but with the entrails of his own son Narfi. The god who had used another's son as a weapon is now bound by the very flesh of his own offspring. The gods then take his other son, Vali, and transform him into a wolf, forcing him to tear his brother apart so his insides can become the fetters. It is a moment of profound, chilling cruelty, showing that the gods can be as monstrous as the chaos they seek to contain. The bound Loki is then placed upon sharp rocks. A serpent is fastened above his head, and its venom is arranged to drip, one drop at a time, onto his face. His faithful wife Sigyn sits beside him, holding a bowl to catch the poison, but when the bowl becomes full, she must leave to empty it. In those moments of her absence, the venom falls on Loki, and his agony is so great that he writhes, causing earthquakes that shake the very foundations of the world. That image of a wife's desperate love holding back a river of poison only to be overwhelmed by its constant flow is the heart of the punishment's true horror. It is a torture designed not to kill, but to eternally suffer, a fate that is as much a punishment for Sigyn as it is for Loki. They remain there in that cave, a family shattered by the very institutions that once gave them purpose, a testament to the collateral damage of cosmic rage. The most counterintuitive aspect of this entire story is that the gods could have simply killed Loki, yet they chose a fate that appears far worse and infinitely more dangerous. Think of it this way: if you have a dangerous animal that has bitten you, your first instinct is to put it down. The Norse gods, however, decided to keep the animal alive, torture it, and leave it in a cage made of its own offspring. Why? Because they believed in a prophecy. The binding of Loki was not a solution, it was a delay tactic. They knew from an ancient prophecy that Loki would break free from these bonds at the onset of Ragnarök, the end of the world. By chaining him, they were not preventing the apocalypse, but merely postponing it to an unknown, terrifying future. The futility of their action is staggering. The gods, who are supposed to be all-powerful, are shown to be prisoners of fate, unable to avoid their destiny. The irony is that by creating this elaborate, horrific punishment, they are actively ensuring the conditions for the very prophecy they fear. They are giving Loki a lifetime of hatred and a deep-seated desire for revenge that will fuel his fury when he finally breaks loose. The punishment is a self-fulfilling prophecy, a desperate act of defiance against an inevitable future that they know is coming. It demonstrates that the Norse worldview was not one of heroic optimism, but a grim acceptance of a doomed world, where even the greatest powers are merely playing a delaying game against the twilight of the gods. The whole affair is a tragic paradox, where the only way to maintain order is to commit an act of profound disorder, which in turn guarantees the ultimate collapse of that order. The snake drips. Sigyn holds her bowl. Loki wreathes. The earth trembles. Baldur is dead. The mistletoe is the weapon. The dart was thrown by a blind god's hand. The hand was guided by Loki. The gods sought revenge. They caught the trickster. They killed his son. They used his entrails as chains. They turned his other son into a wolf. They placed him on sharp stones. They hung a serpent above his face. The venom falls. The bowl fills. She empties it. He screams. The ground shakes. The sea churns. The world holds its breath. The binding is complete. The prophecy is set. The chains will not hold forever. The wolf will come. The serpent will release its poison. The bound god will break free. The ship made of nails will sail. The armies will gather. The final battle will begin. The sun will darken. The stars will vanish. The earth will sink into the sea. The gods will fight. The gods will fall. The fire will consume. The world will end. And at the center of it all, a single act of vengeance will be remembered as the spark that lit the final inferno. The punishment of Loki is not the end of the story. It is the grim preface to the end of everything. And so, the question that began this entire tale is finally answered. The reason the gods bound Loki with his own son's entrails was not for simple retribution, but to delay the inevitable. They were not punishing him for Baldur's death alone, but for the entire chain of events his actions had set in motion. Events they knew would culminate in their own destruction. The punishment was a desperate, futile act of cosmic procrastination. The gods knew that when those bonds break, the world will end, and they will die. Loki is not just a prisoner awaiting judgment. He is a force of nature held in a fragile cage, and his rage is the ticking clock of the Norse cosmos. The chains are a testament to the gods' fear, not their power. The story leaves us with a chilling thought. If the gods themselves believed that their justice could only be meted out through such an atrocity, and that even then it could not change their fate, what does that say about the nature of power, justice, and the inescapable pull of our own destinies? We are left to wonder, if the end is truly unavoidable, is there any act of cruelty, no matter how terrible, that can ever be considered a victory?